There's something strange in the air, an emptiness that can't be explained with words, but that everyone feels deep down in their soul. We live surrounded by lights, screens, and voices, but inside we carry a heavy, almost suffocating silence. It's as if we're always busy, always connected, but increasingly distant from ourselves, as if essence had been erased amidst the noise. This is not just an individual feeling, it is a collective phenomenon. A silent psychosis has taken over society, turning pain into spectacle, loneliness into routine, and fear into fuel. What was once lived as a spiritual and communal experience today dissolves into endless notifications and distractions. But there is a different path, the reunion with the presence, with the sacred that cannot be bought, with the inner vibration that reminds us of who we really are. And that's exactly what we'll explore in this video. How to escape the illusion and preserve sanity in a world gone mad. So I invite you, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to wake up from this collective torpor, because reflecting, feeling, and seeking meaning in the midst of chaos is the first step towards true freedom. It's curious how, in the midst of so many lights and noises of the city, there is a silence that no one comments on. It's the inner silence, that feeling that something doesn't fit, even when everything seems fine. People wake up early, follow their routines, achieve goals, post photos of themselves smiling, but inside them there's a strange echo, almost as if they carry an unfillable void. This pain doesn't show up on tests, but it gnaws at you. It's like being surrounded by people, and yet feeling invisible. Imagine the scene. Someone finishes a full day, worked hard, was productive, but arrives home and when laying their head on the pillow, feels an inexplicable weight. It's not just physical fatigue, it's an exhaustion of the soul. Many try to fill this hole with consumption, food, endless series, but the more they look outside, the further away they become from within. The truth is, this pain doesn't scream, it whispers. And precisely for this reason, almost no one notices, until it grows too much. This silent restlessness is not just individual, it is a collective symptom. Almost everyone knows someone who blew up out of nowhere, or decided to drop everything to start a simple life somewhere else. And no, that's not weakness. It's just the body and mind signaling that living like this is not natural. This feeling of emptiness is not the end, but it can be the beginning of a deeper search. It's as if this pain were a secret note, warning that there is something bigger to be discovered. The promise of modernity was seductive. To be free, to be able to choose everything, to reinvent yourself whenever you wanted. However, this abundance of options also brought a side effect: fragmentation. The modern individual, freed from old references such as community, tradition, and spirituality, began to wander in an infinite sea of possibilities. And in this sea, the more choices arise, the harder it becomes to find direction. It's like having a menu with 1,000 dishes and still leaving hungry. When we don't know who we are, we seek to show what we have. Today's society has turned pain into social currency. Likes, posts of suffering, crises displayed as trophies. The inner emptiness is covered up with external performance, and this has become the rule, not the exception. Think about how many times someone displays happiness on social media, but off the internet they feel an unbearable weight. It's a collective performance, and the stage is always packed. The audience applauds, but no one realizes that the play is about a growing void. This rootless freedom ends up functioning as an invisible prison. If traditions once offered a basis of meaning, today many live like luxurious houses without foundations, beautiful on the outside, fragile on the inside. This displacement is not only social, it is also spiritual. Modern man has exchanged the search for the sacred for the frantic race for status. But when the sacred disappears, the sense evaporates together, and it is at this point that the fertile ground for collective psychosis begins to form. Nothing we experience today is by chance. Digital tools are designed to capture attention, like little pocket casinos. Every notification, every like, every infinite scroll works like a dopamine shot in the brain. It's not a coincidence. It's behavioral engineering. The individual believes he is choosing, but in fact he is being led. And when the mind gets used to this cycle, it loses the ability to be silent. Always needs more stimulation, more distraction, more noise. But there is another element even more powerful: fear. It is he who keeps the mass cohesive, obedient. Fear of being rejected, fear of not keeping up with the trend, fear of being left behind. On social media, this fear disguises itself as a need for acceptance. People don't post just because they want to, but because they fear disappearing in the sea of voices. Historically, it was fear that fueled totalitarian regimes. Today, it takes the form of hashtags, cancellations, and opinions imposed as dogma. When addiction meets fear, we have the perfect recipe for mass psychosis. The mind no longer thinks, it just reacts. It's as if the individual lived in a golden cage, comfortable, colorful, full of stimuli, but still a prison. And the most ironic thing is that many believe they are free, when in fact they are programmed to obey. This slavery does not use iron chains, but chains of ideas, invisible, but profoundly effective. And in this scenario, an inevitable question arises. What happens to the mind when it is bombarded without rest? When a mind is subjected to constant stimuli, it fragments. Science shows this clearly. Classic experiments reveal that people change their answers just to follow the majority, even when they know they're wrong. It's as if the brain, in order to not feel the pain of exclusion, sacrifices its own lucidity. The curious thing is that this pain of being rejected activates the same brain areas as physical pain. In other words, the mind prefers to suffer from the group's lie rather than face the solitude of truth. This fragility increases in contexts of chronic stress. Anxious societies, connected without pause, live in a state of permanent alert, and in this state, the rational part of the brain weakens. The result, a collective regression. The individual returns to operating by instinct, by impulses, incapable of reflecting deeply. This is why simplistic narratives gain so much traction. They require less effort, they offer quick certainties, and, above all, they give an immediate sense of belonging. The problem is that this regression opens the door to large-scale manipulation. Opinions are no longer constructed through personal reflection and become outsourced. Headlines decide what to think. Tweets shape emotions. Viral videos fuel ready-made revolts. The mind no longer distinguishes between what it feels and what it consumes. It's as if consciousness has been hijacked, turned into an automatic reflex. And when this kidnapping takes place, the inevitable question arises: how to escape this labyrinth without losing your sanity? The first step to escape is to accept that the normal we lived was, in fact, the cradle of the disease. As Krishnamurti said, "It is no sign of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." Therefore, anyone who wishes to preserve their sanity must, first of all, create internal roots. This can be done in many ways: through philosophy that provides a foundation, through spirituality that connects to the invisible, through art that restores enchantment, or through the simple act of walking in silence in nature, away from the noise of screens. It is in this area that we find practical examples. Instead of checking your phone when you wake up, how about starting your day with a short prayer, a meditation, or even reading a good spiritual book? Something simple like Letters from a Stoic by Seneca, or In Search of Meaning by Viktor Frankl, can offer more food for the soul than 1,000 notifications. The secret is not to abandon the world, but to create rituals that protect the mind from excess. Small daily anchors become invisible walls against chaos. Another essential point is to cultivate compassion. Those who seek lucidity run the risk of becoming contaminated by anger, becoming so indignant at the absurd that they end up being swallowed up by it. But resisting is not just denying, it is also maintaining inner purity. Constant anger is a prison in disguise, while serenity is freedom. Therefore, escaping collective psychosis does not mean living in isolation, but learning to see beyond illusions without becoming their hostage. And when the individual begins to walk this path, he discovers that the true revolution is silent. Modern society has taught us to seek answers outside, on screens, from gurus, in self-help books, but the silence continues within. And perhaps it is precisely in this silence that the key lies. What we call spirituality is not necessarily religion or dogma. It is their connection with the invisible. It is realizing that there is a spark inside every human being, something that cannot be bought, nor controlled, nor manipulated. When this party turns on, even the pain begins to take on another meaning. It is in contact with this sacred interior that healthcare can be preserved in times of collective psychosis. Because Thomas think together, but the awakened soul walks in depth. This can happen in a sincere prayer, in a conscious breath, in a simple contemplation of the sunset. It's not about escaping reality, it's about seriality with different eyes. As Jung said, the world does not suffer from a lack of wonders, but from a lack of enchantment. When someone rediscovers this sacredness within themselves, something changes shape. Irreversible. Fear no longer dominates so much. Anxiety no longer screams with the same force, and loneliness transforms into creative solitude. It's as if the soul says, "You were never alone. You just forgot to look inside." Maybe this is the biggest rebellion possible nowadays, to preserve the awakened spirit in the midst of a sleeping society. It is at this point that the true treatment begins, silently, but profoundly. Along this journey, we have seen that mass psychosis is not an accident, but a symptom of a spiritual and philosophical void that has spread throughout our time. And precisely for this reason, resisting it requires more than just information. It requires awareness, presence, and an intimate decision not to live anesthetized. Those who can see this scenario clearly carry a burden, it's true, but they also discover a freedom that few know. The freedom to think with their own mind and feel with their own soul. Now the question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue living on autopilot, consuming ready-made narratives? Or will you start creating your own lucidity rituals? It could be something simple, turning off your cell phone for a few hours, having deep conversations with real people, or even writing down the ideas that spark your most in a notebook. They are small gestures, but they accumulate like bricks of an internal fortress that no one can take from you. And if this content touched you, leave your comment. I want to know what you think and how you've been dealing with this increasingly chaotic world. Share this with someone you feel needs this reflection, because lucidity needs allies. And of course, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep receiving content like this. Here we build more than videos. Together we create a space of conscience amidst the noise.